Came on.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Carla from MindPlore with Carla and Friends. We are late because Zoom or the internet has been doing weird things with everyone today. We were supposed to have Neville here, and Neville is still attempting to get here. Hopefully he will. We have Kurt, but Kurt had some major problems and thought he had to do it in his barn or something. But the lights came on and now he's back with us. And of course, we have Jeanne, and I'm having a weird challenge too. So just join the group. If you're having major problems with internet, you are not alone today. We are just getting this on air. And after saying that, let me remind you that we are talking about taking the stress out of the joy of the holidays. Did I say that right?
Trading stress for joy.
Yeah, we're trading stress for joy. And this whole group has been dealing with some stress today, but that's okay because that's part of life and we all know about that. Having said that, Jeanne, you know what I want to do, and I will put that link in the chat in a second and get to work. So Jeanne, please take over.
Okay. Yes, it's always interesting when we're going to talk about something that we kind of live it first. So trading stress for joy is, I think, a great subject to talk during these interesting times, let's say. So I found some great quotes I want to share. One is from the Greek Stoic philosopher Epictetus. He said, "He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he has not, but rejoices for those which he has." Some great quotes I want to share.
Whoa.
One is from the Greek Stoic philosopher. I always like to hear myself repeated. That's good.
I got it checked because they changed my status today on my computer and they upgraded me. We had some stress going on with that.
Yeah. Technology is beautiful. So Epictetus said, "He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he has not, but rejoices for those which he has." And then I found something Charles Dickens said, and I think this might have helped him write his famous Christmas carol. "Reflect upon your present blessings, of which every man has plenty, not on your past misfortunes, of which all men have some." That's pretty good. When I read that, I started thinking of the Ghost of Christmas Past and the Ghost of Christmas Future. So staying in the present is the message I get. And then Eckhart Tolle, a New Thought philosopher and author, wrote, "Acknowledging the good that you already have in your life is the foundation for all abundance." And I'd like to change that abundance to joy for this discussion. Acknowledging the good you already have in your life is the foundation for all joy. So as we go through the crazy times, and this tends to be a very busy time, end of the year, at work, the holidays, with your family, we tend to have a lot of things to do. But if we could stay in the present and understand the joy that we can get from the gifts that are right in front of us, that will help us trade that stress for joy. Kurt?
Yes, I'm so fascinated with stress because I've been a peak performance trainer for elite athletes around the world and corporations and all that. And I was on a hijacked airplane. People know a lot of my story already if they've ever paid attention to MindPlore. And I've taught stress management at Oxford Medical School program and the United Nations. In my life, I look at like that very stoic way because it's like walking in the woods And this is one of the best things that people can do to de-stress is walk anywhere, whether it's on the beach or what, but in nature. And maybe if you can, barefooted or what. When we do this, we're not worried about anything. And some stuff may come up. Let's say you have to go. I was at a place called Doubtful Creek once, a backpacking trip in northern Washington. And there was this cascading rock waterfall to the left, a place where we're supposed to cross here, which is about waist deep water. And then about 10 yards down was a waterfall, about 300-foot drop. And there was no bridge. You had to unstrap your backpack. You got to be able to take your boots off and put it over your shoulder to wade across. If you made a mistake, you were history. But some people doubt that they can get across and don't give it a go. They'll turn around and walk all the way back. But when you get to the other side, these are the challenges that people are going through today. This, lockdown and this and that and the stresses of everything. When we get to the other side, it's so much different. It's so beautiful. And we can choose to give it a go, or we can choose to turn around. The key factor is you can treat stress like water off a duck's back. You can keep it and hold it and absorb it, or you can be like the duck and let it just, okay, somebody cut me off on the freeway and I show them their IQ. And I may say some really kind words like blessings, you need it. But I yell that usually. I don't yell something else because I don't know what their issue is. I do know that if I get upset, then this body is stressed out and doesn't function well, and I can get sick because of the overstress. So that's why I meditate. That's why I teach many different practices to get rid of the stress. If you have any, there's an incredible trauma tapping technique. And I can send it to anybody who sends me an email through successsystemsinternational.net. And I'll send them this trauma tapping technique that has been used with people from the Uganda genocide that have not sung and danced in so many years. And now they're left dancing with this trauma tapping technique, as well as I have a practice that's called switching. And that's a very good thing to be able to change things. So we can, and this guy also went over to, this friend of mine is Ulf Sandström. He went to the child soldiers in the Congo who had to kill their own friends. And they had not danced and so on. So talk about trauma. But with this special technique, it works wonders.
Interesting. Interesting. I love the idea of the trauma technique to, I don't know, help us manage trauma. Is that what it helps, or change it?
Well, what it does is it in a way, it rewires your brain from the stress of trauma tightens up your body big time. And the blood vessels don't work so well, your mind doesn't work so well. All kinds of things happen when you're traumatized. This allows a release of the neurotransmitters to be able to function again because they've been constricted so much. It like resets your computer or something like that. If you'd like to learn it, I can basically show you, like, you take 2 fingers basically, and you tap the outer side of your hand. And you do this about 20 times. And as you tap it, you think, oh, that's, what am I doing this for? Oh, yes, I'm de-stressing. And then once you've done it about 20 times, then you go up to just above the eyebrows, just near the center, in the inside part of where your eyes are, and you can see where it's done. And again, I can send you this in a little PDF of 1 page. It shows this. And once you've done about 20 here, then you go over to here.
So it's a type of tapping?
Yes, it is. It is a tapping technique. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did your lights go out again, Kurt?
Yeah, they did. That's why I'm so dark. Oh, that's right. I got to go back outside.
Yeah, it's like
Good thing I
almost,
kept
I can't see what you're doing, but that,
I'm sorry. I
for
wasn't
all our
watching.
viewers, is how we
Give
respond
it a
to.
moment and see if it turns.
Pardon?
You're fine where you are now.
Where I am now. I'll go get my jacket on again.
Yeah, it's,
I'll come back.
this is how we respond to things that happen. It's one of the ways to trade stress for joy is to say, okay, this is something I can't control versus something I can control. When the lights go out, you know,
I'll tell you one thing real quickly. I'm not sure if I'm interrupting because I just jumped back, but you see what just happened for me. I had to go all the way upstairs before this because I got knocked off just before we're coming on. And I ran upstairs and plugged in the Wi-Fi to the battery that I have ready because we have outages here and we're prepared because I was a Boy Scout type of a person. And Boy Scout motto is be prepared. But I had to run upstairs, do that, come down, get this, jacket and so on and come out here. But what was that? It was just something I got to do. Now, if I look at it as have to, if I look at it as struggle, it's like when a little child climbs up a big, tall ladder and the mother's at the bottom because on the other side is a big slide, long slide because it's so tall. Well, oftentimes you'll see mothers climbing up behind the child so the child doesn't fall. Well, I just sit at the bottom and watch my boy go up. He may be 4 years old or whatever he might be. And he climbs up and then I run to the other side once he starts to slide. Well, if you climb up with him, your tense energy, they sense it. They are still in tune. And that tightens them up. Or you say, watch out. And immediately they tighten up. And that's when they will fall most likely and things like that. So when you're calm throughout your life, like when somebody approached me with a gun at Crenshaw High School, I calmly but firmly said, give me the gun. Now, how did I get into that ability? I've been meditating at that time, probably about 8 years. Now, 8 years, about an hour a day. That, I believe, is one of the key, it is the best de-stressor or preventer of stress, but that is one of the keys in life to live intuitively instead of just from your left brain. We have a left brain here. You see this? This is a left brain. Why? Because it has all the facts and figures. But the right brain is the one that actually knows why and how to use it wisely. We have intuition, inspiration, intellect. It's all there and it's all inside. That's why people meditate. Calm the savage beast of the mind. It's either your best friend or your worst enemy. So that's a lot.
It brings two things up. Go ahead, Carla.
Actually, that's an issue for everyone, that we forget to go inside. We create our worlds from our mind.
Yes.
If we want a peaceful world, we're going to have it if we decided that we wanted it in our mind. The same thing here, what Kurt was talking about. We get connected with ourselves and our minds by going within. And when we have that connection, we also feel, or I have felt when I'm really calm and relaxed, that there is a fountain of joy within me. It's within everyone. And the only reason that it gets lost is that we as individuals forget that calmness, that fountain of joy is there. When we go to sleep at night and we sleep we are giving our mind a rest. But it's also giving a chance for that fountain of joy to spring up inside of us. So it's really important for us to remember that the moment we begin to feel a little tense, like I had some real tension going on for a few minutes ago, and attempting to get everyone here and get us online, and there were kind of silly issues coming up. But when we're intensely tense, then we lose that ability to see that calmness. We lose that ability to feel relaxed. And when someone comes, like a mother watching a baby climb up the stairs and climbs up after the baby, what happens is we're claiming that stress again. And if we could only remember to relax, to take a deep breath, to realize that within ourselves is that peace, and that peace will bring that peace to the world. That is the beginning of education. It's not learning to read and write. It's learning to realize who we are really. And we are really just energy. And it's that energy collective, how we use it. We can think about everything going wrong, or remember everything that's going right. Now, I like to choose going right, but I admit that I do go with going wrong at times. But it doesn't matter. As long as we come back and we flip it to the right. Maybe you need to talk to a friend. Maybe you just need to close your eyes. I use whatever technique works at the moment. Jeanne?
Well, what you're talking about.
Before you forget, I want to tell you guys, please share out the link. And if you share out the YouTube link, we'll be very, very grateful. I will put that in the chat too. Okay, Jeanne.
I was going to say, there's a lot to this about changing your perspective. Kurt's story about the child on the slide, I heard in a little bit of a different way when my son was growing up and he was starting to explore. What I heard or what I read was a story where the difference between a mother and a father when their child climbs a tree. The mother says, "Oh my gosh, he's going to fall. He's going to break a bone." And the father kind of gets underneath the tree and goes, "Oh, so what's a broken bone or two?" Kind of lets him explore. And that changed how I looked at raising my son. I was a single mother, and what it told me was I had to mix the male and the female kind of energy when I was raising him. So instead of going, there was a time where he climbed up the equivalent of about 2 stories on a tree once in a park. And there were mothers that were like trying to flag me down and, get your son. And I looked at them, I said, everything's okay. And I looked up at Chris and I said, "Chris?" And he goes, "Mom, look at me. He's so proud of himself. And I said, "That's really nice, hon. Can you kind of shimmy down carefully? Otherwise we can't get you your ice cream." And, he shimmied down so fast, and the other mothers yelled at me. They were like, you're rewarding him for bad behavior. I said, "There's nothing bad about that behavior. He was being a boy, and yeah. I'm rewarding him with the ice cream I promised him from the game. There's nothing wrong." And then they kept pushing. I said, "So did we call 911? Did we need to get the police and the firemen here?" No, he actually came down exactly as I asked him to. So it was having a bit of a different perspective helped me through that process. And it's the same when we're looking at the stresses we have every day. Looking at something from just a little bit of a different point of view. So Kurt, you also brought up, the right brain and the left brain. When you held up the phone, the left brain tends to be the logical, this, then this, then this, 1 + 1 = 2. And the right brain is like, 1 + 1 = 11, because it looks at things completely different. And so one of the things I do in my meditations, when I remember to give myself time to do it, because not all of us are as disciplined as you are, Sir Kurt. I actually say in my head as I'm relaxing, okay, left brain, you get to shut down. It's right brain's turn. And something that specific has helped me let go, because you know those thoughts, they just go boom, 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 boom. We've got everything in the world to do. Our to-do lists are about so long, they just keep growing and growing. But if you can say, give me a break, give me 1 second to think in a different dimension, give me 1 second to be outside of the you gotta do, or the as I like to say, the shoulda, coulda, wouldas, and focus on just relaxing, taking that deep breath, embracing the fact that it's great that you have all this stuff to do, looking at it from a different perspective. Yeah. If you didn't have a list about as long as the Nile River, maybe you didn't have such a big family, or maybe your work wasn't going as successful. So let's flip that around. I have a big list to do. Let's prioritize, and I can get it done because I'm living a great life. So changing perspective can become an extremely important tool that we need to do, but understanding that it's difficult because we let emotion drive us quite a bit. And once you're in that emotional state, it's really hard to kind of jump into a more relaxed state. You need to let the emotions process a little. And sometimes that's as simple as just acknowledging, I'm really worked up. I'm really stressed out here. I'm really frustrated. And then, kind of give yourself a second to process, and then go, and kind of just breathe it out there.
I was going to mention something that there's a book called The Continuum Concept. And in it described some people in the Orinoco area of North America, northern part of South America, in these big mountains, and they're portaging this big heavy canoe, and they get pinned against the hot rocks and this, that, and the other thing. The Westerners that were with these indigenous were really uptight and fetching all the time. And yet they see let's say this one native was pinned against this really hot rock, and as soon as he gets unpinned, they start laughing and joking. They start laughing and joking. When they get up to the big mountaintop where the tribe was living, they saw these little kids just barely crawling, and they were going right to the next precipice, right next to this cliff. And they were freaking out, but they saw that the natives were not. The child, most of us don't know this, but children are more in tune with nature and life than you imagine. And it's an awesome experience. The world is as you see it. Now, if you want to, you'd see this guy hanging up on the cross, and he's up there, and his name is Brian, the life of Brian. And what does he start singing? He starts singing, always look on the bright side of life. And he's singing this. Why? He can't change his position, but he used something that released some of that fetching. Also, like when I did a training with a guy named Wim Hof. He's called the Iceman. You can look up his book or anything like that. There's a book called What Doesn't Kill Us, describes his work. He puts people into wading pools that are like 2 feet deep. Half of that pool was filled with ice, and then they fill it up the rest of the way. I was in this training, and as we went outside, this is right near Olympic Boulevard in West LA, and we're out there in our nice swimsuits, and get into this pool. And it was interesting because there's about 10 people in there with me because it's such a big pool. And you could see the tension on their faces and the trepidation, like one person pushed down on the pool and it let out a lot of ice and water. But we're sitting in there and I'm the eldest person in the whole place. I'm only 75. And there's all these young people that get in and they look like they're buff and cut and all that kind of stuff. And they got out like a minute before I did. I lasted over 2 minutes in there, but partway through, I just felt like laughing. So I did, and I'm laughing uproariously. And that, I think, also triggered some other people not to laugh, but they're looking at old weird Harold. They're looking at all this weird guy who's laughing and they're freezing. When I got out, I got to stand there and do some of the Wim Hof method. I never did dry off. I let the air dry me off. Everybody else is getting dry as fast as they can. Why? It's an attitude. It's an exploration of what the body can do. The body can do. There's a picture of a man lifting over 7,000 pounds in a book called Winning Ways for Living. It's a book that was written in 2016. After 40 years of exploring peak performance in life. How did he do it? He was over 60 years old when he did it. So what can't this body do? When women pick up cars and pull their child from underneath it, how does that happen? People say adrenaline. It's not adrenaline. There's all kinds of adrenaline flowing through a mother that doesn't do it. There's incredible adrenaline, but it doesn't get them to pick it up. The spirit that is intrinsic in this body, that is not worrying about, the weatherman tells me it's going to be cold or rainy. Oh no, it's going to be bad. I'm worried about tomorrow, and it's not even tomorrow. You get to be here now, fully alive and feeling good. What is better than that? So, like yesterday, I was on a big podcast with about 20,000 viewers at least, and one of the things I got to ask people to do is laugh. And most people can't do it when you ask them.
And I can tell you why.
Why?
People are afraid to laugh. They're afraid that they're going to look stupid. They don't realize the value of laughter. They don't realize the value of their smile. If they did, no one would ever buy an antidepressant in the world, because this is the strongest antidepressants in the world, your smile and your laugh. And if only people would realize that it's within their reach to move forward and move forward with joy. I remember when Sri Ravi Shankar asked me to do this, I thought he was crazy. But as I did it more and more, and I applied it to my life before I applied it outside of my life, I found myself less depressed because I turned it around. And one story I always tell is the story. It was about 10, maybe 15 years ago. I was really depressed and I decided to take myself out for lunch. And I'm like, literally. And I finished eating what I got and I needed to get something in the mall. And the moment I walked out of the restaurant, I decided I'm going to make myself smile whether I want to or not. I'm just going to smile. Within seconds, my whole blood chemistry changed, my whole thinking changed, and I began to feel better. And what I saw is there's a lot of research out about smiling. So if you smile at someone you don't know, whether they smile at you while they're in your sight or they smile to the next person, it changes another person.
It
So
might prevent a person from killing themselves. That simple thing.
right.
Simple thing, how are you? Simple connection with people, and the smile always connects.
Right.
So
wait, can I finish another story before we move on?
Sure.
And another thing that I realized when Sri asked me to go out and make everyone laugh, I learned that we don't need to be sad, that joy is within us and it will always be within us. We just don't use it. And the only way to tell people to begin this is to give them that opportunity. Okay, Jeanne.
Well,
I forgot the story that I wanted to tell.
I was going to say, as a kind of a summary statement of those stories, is putting our focus on joy versus stress would be useful, especially in this kind of chaotic times that we're in. So focusing on things like something that might make you laugh. I mean, I know when I was going through some hard times a while back that I used to watch comedy movies on purpose. Really, sometimes really raunchy comedy movies just to get me to laugh, because I couldn't do it for myself. And that made a difference. And then as Carla, as you mentioned, just starting to get to laugh changes your body chemistry and you start to be a little bit more open. And I recall I was going through a very, very difficult time. And one of my sisters said, "You seem to be handling this with such grace." And I thought, I don't know what you're talking about. But what she was responding to was, instead of me being all, which I can do, sometimes we actually think that that's the thing to do. But what I did was I would take a deep breath and say, it's going to unfold the way it needs to, and just kind of handled things as they came at me versus being all worked up, waiting for something to happen. And when she used the word grace, when she was describing that, I actually it was like having somebody kind of slap you awake, that nice, pay attention. And that made me stop to think, yeah, this is different. This is different because I've been laughing and managing and taking one step in front of the other and not focused on all the bad. That made me get through the ordeal in a much different way than I had normally been. And I will tell you, I credit that with my son, because at the time he was a young kid. He was probably a toddler at the time. But the thing that kids do, Kurt, you said they're in tune with the earth. The thing that kids do when you have a great kid around is it grounds you in the moment.
Yes.
So whatever was going on in my life didn't matter as long as I made sure he was safe, he was fed, he was taken care of, and his laughter. There's nothing like a kid's laughter to bring you out of it. So if you're having a hard time with the holidays, folks, get one of those memes that you see on Twitter or Facebook of the little baby just laughing for a minute or so, and play it over and over. That sound is manna from heaven. That sound takes us out of our own drama. Because that's what it is. When we have it in our head, it's drama. And we get to rewrite the drama because, as I've said many times, we're the author of our story. So we get to change the perspective. And when you change the perspective, that changes the perception. And, there's nothing like, my 2-year-old grandson laughing. to get me to think, oh, life is good. You know, it's just a beautiful, beautiful sound. You were going to say something, Kurt?
Well, I can always say something. That's one of the crazy things. When you're 94,000 years old, you can have a good time anytime. And this is one of the things
94,000.
like that.
Okay, I would have only picked 3,000.
But the point is, Kurt, if you're thinking about being too old, or you're thinking about, I know you're not. If people are thinking in that way, it makes it hard to find the joy. We have been told all through our lives that we are not to be joyful. We have to be serious and work hard and blah, blah, blah. We can work hard and really love what we're doing if we're in tune with ourselves. We can work hard and do anything. But if we're not in tune with ourselves and we become a doctor because mommy wanted us to be a doctor and we wanted to prove who we are to mommy, then we are missing the point of life. And that is when the stress becomes a big thing.
Well, that's the society actually puts all of this on us.
Right.
And when I'm doing a reinculturation training, and the training is basically, in a way, watching your words and actions. Like, I'm going through a 40-day process that allows this Kurt to become so positive. Can you imagine if you are the light, if you are the sun? There's no darkness. Absolutely none. So when you stay focused on the love, pardon?
We are, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have interrupted, but we
are the
light.
Well, the thing that keeps us from understanding and being that is that mentation, excess mentation, the mental stuff. When you see somebody who's in the space of purity, of light, like you said about Sri Ram,
Sri Ravi Shankar.
Yeah. You know, he emanates that light. You feel the presence. It's like hanging out with the Dalai Lama is very similar, or Muktananda, or the different people that are immersed in the love and light that they are. I'll give you an example. I said it yesterday on this big platform. I was in Atlanta, Georgia in 1974. And Muktananda, my teacher, was cooking in the kitchen in this big mansion outside of Atlanta. And this boy is walking with a whole stack full of plastic bowls. And for some reason, he drops them right at the entrance to the kitchen in this hallway. And I'm walking up to help him. And Muktananda comes up to the door, and he's just standing there looking down. And the boy goes, "Oh, I'm sorry, Bob, I'm sorry." And Muktananda said something just like that. Only fools say they're sorry, and walk back into the kitchen. And I thought, what? That's not kind. I'm thinking all these horrible thoughts. And I go up to the guy, I said, "How do you feel, dude? Let me help you with this," and so on. "Hey, man," he says, "I just understood from what he said that I should be doing what I need to do now." The bowls were dropped. All we had to do is pick it up. You don't have to be sorry for anything. It's like a little baby or a little boy or a little girl who falls. You don't have to say, "Oh, I'm sorry for you." Kids fall, and if somebody runs up to help them, they immediately tense and cry. But if you let them just get up, and they'll start playing again. So many times until they get acculturated, until they get conditioned to, have to kvetch about it. So we get to be able to retrain ourselves. So when we have a negative habit, there's a practice called switching. And you can learn this practice. It's in Winning Ways for Living, and it's on a video if somebody wants to email me through successsystemsinternational.net. I'm happy to send you a little link to it. You use switching And a boy who was sucking his thumb for 14 years, here he is in junior high, he's sucking his thumb. He's in my PE class. And I see him do this, and I thought, I'll talk to him after class. And so I says, do you want to keep sucking your thumb? He says, no. And I said, well, you do this. And I started guiding him through this switching practice. Within 2 weeks, he'd stopped sucking his thumb. It reverses bad habits or depression. Let's say you say, I'm so sad, or I'm so, depressed. Well, we do as soon as you catch your mind doing something that doesn't make you feel good, we get to do the practice that makes you feel good. You switch it, you turn it around, and you zip it up in your energy field, the new you. It's a real quick and easy practice. And when you get used to it, habits that are not so good for you drop away.
And that's the whole thing. It's flipping that switch.
Yes.
And becoming aware of it. It's not that hard. It's just becoming aware of that switch that's in the brain that says, hey, you're not good enough. How can you not be good enough? You're the only you. And you can only be you. You cannot be anyone else. Jeannie?
That brings up the idea of judgment. And that's something I've been working on, because we assume other people's judgments are real. I was just explaining to somebody how I've been working for the last couple of years on myself because I don't like being judged. I really don't like when I do have a friend who said things to me as my son was growing up. You can't do that with him. And I would go, what are you talking about? And we finally had it out when I said, you don't have kids, so you don't understand. I mean, literally, there was a time when Chris was a little older than usual, maybe about 9 or 10. And he woke up in the middle of the night and he climbed into bed with me, and we went back to sleep. And, I realized he had something on his mind, and that's how he let me know that we needed to talk. And so to me, there's no judgment there. This is normal. Well, what I ended up saying to this friend is, we're the only culture that says that that's a bad thing. Yeah. And I choose not to judge that. And so over the years, this friend has pushed me to the edge enough that I finally said, I don't like this. I don't like being judged. And I realized, and we talked about this a little bit on Tuesday, I realized that this was a mirror to me because I grew up being judgmental, not realizing that I was judging other people just as harshly as I was feeling being judged. So I've been trying to be much more accepting over the last couple of years. So when somebody tells me this dramatic story, instead of saying, you shouldn't do that, or you should do this, or that's really awful, it's not for me to say. That's the lesson that I've learned. It's for me to listen. It's for me to have compassion. And it's for me to say, oh, there's a lesson in there. Maybe we can talk about the lesson, and then help that person kind of figure things out, but they have to figure it out. It can't come from me. Just like when I have a problem, I have to figure it out. I can't go to somebody else. And if I'm saying you shouldn't dress like that, then that makes me think, oh, I'm having a problem with how I dress. So maybe I should rethink something. And so this whole idea of judgment and changing it actually de-stressifies a lot, because I will tell you, I've stopped spending hours on places like Facebook and Instagram because I don't need to know that other people are being judgmental. I mean, I will tell you, sometimes I do dip into the comments on Twitter and on Facebook just because I want to see from more of a comedic perspective, because there's a lot of vitriol being spread, but I protect myself from the vitriol. So I look at it more as comedy, because look at what we need to do. one of the conversations I witnessed in the last couple of days was from a woman who said, we've spent our life learning to be superficial, learning to have relationships that are at the very top layer. And when couples go through difficult times and they make it through, then they get a deeper connection. And that deeper connection, whether it's couples or family or friends, is a much more rich experience. But we have this society that doesn't respect that deepness. It's about, skimming the top like that, the flat rock that you kind of throw at the lake and you get 2 or 3 skips. Well, we should be aspiring to have the deeper connection. So if things are overwhelming in this particular season, as they're likely to do, taking that deep breath and reaching out to somebody that we have a deep connection with helps. Not going to the store and fighting over I'm going to say Cabbage Patch to date myself, but to fight over the latest Cabbage Patch to get to your kid, might seem like a fun thing to do for the moment, but it's not. Having the discussion with your kid that I know you want to have that Cabbage Patch doll, but maybe we can do that when things aren't crazy. I'm trying to set expectations. And that's the last point I want to make, is setting expectations. When we expect something and it doesn't happen, we're disappointed, and that adds to the stress. But if we can be realistic in setting expectations, then we can have a more realistic, more joyful experience. So if I were to say, I'm going to sing Silent Night, it's going to be up on stage in front of 1,000 people, and I'm excited, and then I get to the stage and there's 50 people, I need to stay excited. My expectation was 1,000 people, but the reality was 50. That's okay. Those 50 people are there to support me. So changing your expectation or mitigating your expectations so they're not overly crazy. I write a book and I want 1 million people to buy it, and I sell 4 copies. That's going to be a big disappointment. If I write a book because I have a burning need to get this message out, and if I can change the life of one person, that's an expectation I know I can meet, and then some. So again, it goes back to perspective and perception. Kurt, I see you rubbing your hands, and I can't tell if you're cold or if you have something to say.
He has something to say, and then I may have something. So
what I'm doing now is actually modeling a way to be able to de-stress. And it's a simple practice because some people know about reflexology and the meridians and so on of the body, these energy channels that in India, they'll call them, like everybody knows, the Sushumna and all the Kundalini and all that. But there's the 72,000 subtle nadis or subtle nerve endings. Well, this basically allows you to de-stress. Imagine a little steely, a little ball inside of your cupped hand, and you're rolling it around in a circle. And as you can rock back and forth like I am, side to side like this, or like as if you're in front of the Western Wall in Jerusalem. You'll see people standing in front of that Western Wall moving forward and back. This basically allows you to have some muscle memory to release that tension and stress because of what the effect of with this hand. And this is another tool that Ulf Sandström offered. And if you want to connect up with a dynamic, wonderful soul, he's also a good musician and singing and so on, but connect up with him sometime. So always, we've given people usually an intellectual understanding for like that meditation type of a thing. And there's so many ways to meditate. And the one that I find that's most useful now for people is the Peacemaker Meditation. And just imagine if you're leaning forward and your hands are like holding a tray, and as you've been backwards breathing in, you say peace in everything. And as you've been forward, you say everything with peace. Why? Because peace in everything allows everything to be peaceful. If it's not peaceful inside, it doesn't matter if it's peaceful outside. And this helps to bring that gift of peace in everything for everything to be peaceful. And that can be used in any language. So that's the nice thing. Some mantras you have to have in a certain language because it has the power of thousands of millions of people for thousands of years using it, like Om Namah Shivaya or Om Mane Padme Hum or whatever. This is in any language. And when you have this law of predominant mental impression, it starts to, in a way, create a vacuum. If there's no peace, what's going to bring peace? The universe, this intuition, sparks an idea of how to have more peace in your life, how to be able to bring this simple thing to life. So thank you, Carla.
And one more thought about that. We always tend to forget the greatest tool to get to that point is our breath. We're all connected. I don't care if you're in Pakistan or if you're in the United States or Canada or Europe. It doesn't matter. We all live in this ocean of air. And if we can remember just to take a deep breath in the moment we get tense, and I know, Jeannie, I'm not always good at this, but if we can remember to do that, we're connecting with everything on this planet.
And when we take if out, when we take the word if and replace it with when, because if is like never, may or may not happen, but when it happens, it may not happen all the time, but when it happens, it does this. So when you remember, instead of talking about forget, this is this reinculturation, just looking at the words we use. When we train ourselves, we get to be able to experience more joy because we're seeing this idea of awareness that you were talking about. When we're aware that our mind is thinking negative thoughts, or when we're aware that I feel tense, we can feed it with the things that we choose to feed it that actually make us feel lighter and better and more content.
Right.
Seems to me that there's a word that we haven't said yet, but Kurt, when you were doing this and you were talking about everything in peace in everything, and rocking back and forth, and Carla with your idea of a reminder to breathe, repetition is important. Doing something and doing it more than once so that it becomes part of the muscle memory. And I talk about muscle memory and communication, but doing it in trying to distressify, if I can make up a word, it helps us again to remember. And I want to share something that my brother shared with me that was one of those gestalt moments in my life, the explosions. When I was talking to him, this is almost 30 years ago, and somebody had been using a higher power with me, and I was like, what is higher power? Which is something that's used a lot in all the 12 steps. And my brother used it, and I was like, oh, what do you mean? And I kind of said some words that you don't want to say over the air, but I was a little frustrated. And he goes, what? I go, everybody's using this higher power as a phrase that I'm supposed to know. And I asked a minister, and what he said was, it's God or your idea of God. And I get what he was trying to say, because he couldn't tell looking at me if I was Muslim or Christian or Jewish, so it's whatever your idea of God is. But that was very dissatisfying, because at that moment I was in crisis and I was mad at God. So having it described as that was like, no, literally I said, no, that's not good enough. I don't understand. So I kind of challenged my baby brother of all things. And he said, it's like if you think of God as the sun, the spirit, the universe is the sun. And at the end of every ray of sun is a person. And if you go up that ray closer, closer, and closer to God, that's your higher power. And we're all connected through this sun, through this spirit. And so at one point or another, you can call on your higher power to talk to my higher power. And I said to him in a very big sisterly kind of way, you went to the same church as I went to. You had the same catechisms I had. Where the heck did you learn this? And he told me he'd been going to Marianne Williamson's class in A Course in Miracles. And that was my introduction into kind of new thought and a new philosophy. And it was, like I said, it was like mind blowing, because now higher power sounded like something I could accept. It wasn't about my being angry at God. You know, it was more about me being accountable to myself. And that distressified in a moment some of the anger that I was feeling. And, you know, then I could say, you know, and it was kind of in a meditation before I learned to meditate, I could say to my higher power, I need to take this down a notch. I am really angry and I don't understand what I'm supposed to do, you know, and that was all in my own head. I wasn't calling on anybody else. So just that story that he shared with me was enormous in helping me get through that crisis. And I'd like to remind everyone that sometimes we just need to talk to ourselves in a kind way. Sometimes we need to talk to our friends and our family in a kind way to say, I need help. I mean, I will tell you, in my family, we have 7 kids. And as an adult, there were 6 of us. And my mother had to be away for one of the big holidays. And my dad said, well, I'm going to cook the turkey. And my sisters and I were like, no. And we all showed up. But we had to talk to each other about what it would take for us to cook the turkey in this tiny little kitchen that we called a 2-butt kitchen, because you couldn't have more than 2 people in there because our butts would knock into each other. So we broke it down into those steps. I'm going to go in and I'm going to dress the turkey and get it all ready. And we're going to do that from 2 to 4. And then the other one said, I'm going to come in around 4 and I'm going to work on the dressing and stuff. And I said, I'll be peeling the potatoes and stuff. And I can get that done around 5. And so by the time we had everything done, the dinner was ready at 7 and everything was fine. But we had to talk to each other. So what I'm saying is, whether you talk to yourself, to your higher power, or to somebody you love, let them know you need help, because that helps us trade stress for joy. We don't have to do it alone. We're all part of a team. We're all part of this world. And as Carla, you said so beautifully, we are all connected through our breath, which is the spirit.
And actually, 2 things I want to add. Because we are connected by our breath, this can also be done in silence. I was on a silence course for the first time in my life in 1989. Started on my birthday. And part of the course included doing save it, doing work around the kitchen or in the buildings or whatever. And I remember being in the kitchen one of the first days of the course and having to do work, and we did it in silence. The person who led it silently showed us what to do. We did it. We had questions, we point or we'll do something. But it can be done in silence. And when we get connected in that silence, there is more peace. But in getting connected into the silence also means being kind to yourself. When you are in silence or you are in a situation where you are talking without words, you also need to remember to be kind to yourself. I know sometimes when I'm alone, and things are not going like I want them to go, I'll say, oh my God, what do I have to do? This is horrible. I did the most horrible job ever. Or I can turn it around and say, hey, I'm learning. And we need to learn to flip what we say to ourselves. Because if we are not kind to ourselves, we cannot be kind to others. And that's where kindness begins. And actually, we do need to shut this down in a few minutes, but I want to get some last words from Kurt and Jeanne, and let's kind of keep it no more than 5 minutes for both of you, if we can.
Let's give it a go to be able to thank God for doing his will or the higher power's will in every thought, word, and deed with great strength, health, wealth, and wisdom. When we do this every day, it sets us on a little track of positivity. Or you can replace this God business and say peace or love. How do I express love in each movement? Because Carla was talking about this seva. Seva is selfless service. Mother Teresa was a prime example of karma yoga. Seeing and treating everything as God. These dying people, she treated as if they were Jesus. That was her God. And when we treat everybody the way we would like to be treated, that idea is in every single religion. Treat others better than the way you would like to be treated. Because sometimes it's okay, but if we're treated better, what happens? We get a smile on our face a lot easier. We help others a lot easier. And this is what we're here for, to add the beauty of this particular creation. Because my identical twin may look like me, but his expression is so different. We are very, very different. So see, experience what it is that you're here to give and give it. And that's how you find what is called your dharma. We find our dharma. I used a you, but that was a general you. But when we find it, you'll never, ever work in your life. I've been doing this for years, and it doesn't matter if I'm paid or not. This little platform, I don't get paid for it, but what do we get to do? We get to see about sharing that incredible experience of a wonderful life. Thank you.
You're welcome, Jeanne.
I'd like to acknowledge something you said, Carla, and that's about the words that we use with ourselves. I do recall telling a supervisor once, years and years ago, that nothing she said could be as mean or as critical as the voice in my head. And that's the voice I'm trying to, what did you say, acculturate, Craig?
Yes.
I'm trying to change that voice. But I want to go back to what Eckhart Tolle said: acknowledging the good that you already have in your life is the foundation for all abundance. And that means to me right now, after this conversation, is looking for gratitude and having gratitude for what we already have so that we can peacefully move forward and be there for the others in our life, managing the stress that we're going to go through, but being thankful for it because that keeps us moving forward. So it's changing perspective and changing perception. Carla, how about you? Any final thoughts?
I was just putting them together. I think when we're talking about taking the stress out of the joy, from the joy, trading the stress for the joy. I've been getting this all confused, and it was my words that we ended up using. We need to remember who we are and stop looking at someone as, oh, Jeannie knows more than me, Kurt talks better than me. We all are different. There are no people exactly alike. And I remember a long time ago, I was doing a live with Rehan, and he said, I've met many people, but I haven't met anyone who thinks like I do completely. And that's true. And if we don't listen to what we have within and bring that out to the world and accept ourselves as we are, we'll never bring peace into our world, because we need to accept ourselves before we can accept other people. And having said that, it is definitely time to close this up. I want to thank everyone who watched, and I especially want to thank Jeannie for being here, Kurt for being here, and Neville for trying really hard to get here, but he never quite made it because of technical difficulties. And Shabazz for doing the background work. But the point is, as long as we are doing our best to do whatever we're doing, we're going to be taking the stress out of life. Accept yourself, and you'll find that joy within, which is the joy that goes out into the universe and makes the world joyful. And with that, we'll be back on Tuesday for another MindPlore exploration in the theme of the holidays, which is supposed to be very joyful, but for many, it's very stressful. Can we wave goodbye? Bye, everyone. Thank you.